we talked a little bit about your travel as when you were younger. What was your travel like, and what were your deployments like, and where'd you go, and kind of some of that, if you don't mind sharing some of that history.
Yeah, so the first experience traveling outside of the normal military travel, I mentioned earlier, I went to Israel, and it was actually the best paid vacation the Army ever sent me on. So you're taking a young man who was an E3, and you're taking him to Israel, and Israel's Air Force Base, AIT Air Force Base at that. And the Israelis have some of the most beautiful women in the
I
world.
say,
I
oh,
will
they're
tell
all
you that.
terribly looking at poor you having to go over there.
Yeah, and I was there for 3 months. I think I only worked like 6 times the whole time I was there, but because of my MOS being pretty specialized, the where we had to go, the location that we had to go, we were on Uvda Air Base, and we had to go to Mitzpe Ramon, and we had an armed escort the first couple times we went. And then like a third and fourth, sixth time, it was just us in the vehicle by ourselves. And I was like, oh man, what happened to our armed escort and everything? But we would have to drive 2 hours to go to another base, essentially, and then we'd have to work all night to kind of get everything repaired and then brought back. So it wasn't bad. I mean, 6 active times where I worked, and the rest of the time I was pretty much hanging out, which was a great experience. Definitely not like my first deployment. My first deployment was to Afghanistan in 2006, and I was in Bagram Airfield. I deployed a electronics maintenance shop, and we were the last stop from theater for any electronic pieces that had to go and get higher level maintenance to Kuwait or anything like that. I, so we kind of saw everything come through our shop at one point or another. So I had a team that it was a small team of individuals. All of us. It was our first deployment, and luckily for us, that deployment went pretty well. During that deployment, we were also responsible for hanging the conversion of Frag 5 kits on Humvees, and we had mobile teams that had to travel to every site and be part of that upgrade that was happening in theater. My next deployment was in 2009, and on that deployment, I was very much outside my wheelhouse, but it was kind of the thing that broke me into project management and program management because the Army was expanding out our footprint in Afghanistan. And if you think about it in context, Iraq was closing down at the time, and Afghanistan was becoming the primary mission again. And we were going to increase our footprint in Afghanistan by 30,000 soldiers within 2009. So I was part of the team that inherited from the 101st Airborne Division. We inherited the FOB expansion plan where all these individuals would go. So we inherited the planning and the execution of expanding out FOBs to accommodate 30,000 new troops coming in. So I went to this. It was well outside my wheelhouse. I went kicking and screaming like, "Hey, I'm electronics. I need to be stuck with the maintenance," which is probably not a good look professionally. Hindsight being what it is, but essentially, it was one of the best experiences I could have asked for because I developed skills well outside my wheelhouse that a lot of my peers didn't have. Had a direct impact to what was happening in Afghanistan that year and really had the satisfaction of knowing that my efforts directly impacted people that showed up on ground, to do their part of the mission. So making sure that, we ordered them tents and everything was being built on the file to accommodate them and just staying on top of the construction timelines, so that these individuals, and none of that was apparent to them on what happened to get them their FOB to a state where they can inhabit it, but that was everything we were responsible for. So it was one of the best experiences I could have asked for. A lot of rewarding work, and it really kind of introduced me to the realm of project and program management at that point. And then my last deployment was in 2013 and 2014. And the same fobs I helped build, I now had to take down. So I was a retrograde officer with my unit and responsible for shutting down 33 operational sites in southwest, and southwest and western Afghanistan. Everything from Kandahar all the way over to Shindan and Arena is where we closed fobs down at. My unit got curtailed to go home early, so they were on basically in country maybe 4 months, and the unit got told to stay, but Fourth Infantry Division wanted to pick me up and be their base closure and retrograde officer. So I ended up joining Fourth Infantry Division and replaced the lieutenant colonel whom they sent home, and I became the retrograde and base closure officer for Fourth Infantry Division, doing pretty much the same thing, closing operational sites and turning land over to the Afghans as we reduced our footprint there.
So that just had a quick question around that because in my previous interview with my friend Pat, he talked about Camp Ramrod. Are you familiar with that fob?
I am. I will tell you that Ramrod was not the original name for that fob going in. I think that fob was originally supposed to be named Fob Wolverine, and I remember the unit coming in and wanting to make the change to Ramrod. And
Obviously, Super Trooper fans.
yeah, I am a huge Super Trooper fan, so a lot of chuckles from my end, and just kind of the confusion from people who didn't know what was going on with that name. But yeah, it was pretty funny to me.
Yeah,
So
it was interesting just thinking about your experience and how it might have collided with his, and obviously closing down or standing up or expanding that fob where he was based out of there for a short while. So, and I know in other conversations you've talked about some of those experiences of closing down those fobs when you're talking about what's happening with all the equipment that's in there and just the stories around that. If you don't mind diving into that a little bit for the audience.
yeah, I mean, it was some scary stuff sometimes. In the 2009 deployment, a lot of the times when I visited the sites were pretty barren at the time. So we had minimal footprint out there, and now we're building up. So there was several times in 2009's deployment where I felt like I dodged death's door. Several times around rocket attacks, like literally being in the chow hall and having a rocket round impact just outside the DFAC, but not explode. And that, I mean, it was scary for all of us because it would have taken us out.
Yeah.
And you could feel the impact of it as it landed right outside the building. And just knowing that if that thing had went off, or just directly impacted the building, we wouldn't be conducting this interview today.
Yeah.
There was another time where there was a roadway that passed by our SSA, our supply support activity or warehouse, and I'm on that road, and around a rocket round lands just inside the Romanian compound right off that road, and you're driving and you feel the impact of ordnance hitting the ground, and that was like almost like something you see in the movies where the car's swerving a little bit in the road and you're just trying to get back, make sure that you're safe. There was times having to go outside the wire and where some of the construction was happening, and just being on high alert because you never know when somebody wants to punch your ticket.
Yeah.
On my last deployment, the 2013-2014 deployment, as we're closing fobs, and there was a specific instance where I had to deal with the local police chief for the Afghan National Police Force as we're turning over one of the fobs to him. And there was kind of the American side of the fob where everything looked nice and neat, and then there was the Afghan side of the fob where it was literally closed off. It was their area, and as we were transitioning more things to them, like that was going to open up. You had to sign out with the guards before going into the Afghan side. And I was the only American having to go with this Afghan national police chief. And at the time, um, there was a lot of incidents where Afghans were taking shots at Americans,
Yeah.
and I I was very stressed out by this event. And signing out at the guard shack, they're literally like, "Good luck," and no sarcasm, no nothing. Like they meant it.
Yeah.
And
Installing
I'm
confidence in
escorting
you
this
too on
guy.
your way out.
Man, I was scared, man. Like I had my 9 mil in my vest access, and I had my M4 with me. But he's got guys elevated with AK-47s, and I'm looking, and it's like if that situation was to go bad, it would again we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yeah.
So the pucker factor on that one was pretty high. But luckily, I mean that incident went off without a hitch. It was just you know kind of pointing out areas and things we had to do for the transition, and me just trying to conclude that as quickly as possible so that I can get back where I felt safe. But yeah, I mean there were several times on these deployments where things could have felt like they would have went another way. Each one of these deployments kind of left me with different uh, I don't want to say symptoms, but like I remember uh, the first deployment, after coming back from the first deployment, loud noises would startle me like
Yep.
really bad. And it was my first deployment. I didn't know, I was coming home and that would be the reaction, but it was the reaction. My second deployment, I just remember being constantly fatigued. So I would come home and it never felt like I slept well enough. I was just always tired for some reason, and not knowing why. Maybe it was the anthrax shots they gave me. I don't know, but
All nine of
it
them or
just feeling like I
whatever.
was always tired. Yeah, and then this last deployment, I think I weathered that one pretty well. I mean, it was just kind of, I just worked a lot and came home and just tried to recover as much as possible, sleep a lot, and I don't think there was any as many effects from this last deployment, but
When was your
they all
last
leave
deployment?
something with you. I came home in 2014, so May of 2014. Was it May or is it April? One of those 2 months, April or May of 2014 is when I came back.
It's awesome that you had so much
And
time at
got,
home between that and the end of your career, spending 6 years at that college.
yeah, it was definitely a culture shock because my whole life I've been a hard worker, and now I'm working essentially in the teaching environment. And candidly, I mean, at the end of the day, if it was I was coming home at respectable times, like 3 in the afternoon, 4 in the afternoon, some days, and there wasn't anything going on. I was playing PlayStation or something like that, and so it was definitely a different work life balance than what I've been used to my whole career. So
That's awesome.